My name is Sloan Mitchell, and I'm 28 years old. Last Tuesday, I discovered that my entire family had been living a lie for decades. What started as a simple inheritance reading turned into the most devastating betrayal I could never have imagined. My father handed my golden boy brother every single penny of Grandpa's estate while I got nothing. But when my mom slipped me that mysterious envelope afterward, everything I thought I knew about my family crumbled. The contents would destroy them all. Before we dive into this family drama that'll blow your mind, drop a comment and let me know where you're watching from. Hit that like button if you've ever felt like the family scapegoat, and don't forget to subscribe because this story has more twists than a soap opera. Trust me, you'll want to see how this revenge unfolds. The law office smelled like old leather and broken dreams when we gathered for Grandpa Edmund's will reading. My dad, Richard, sat rigid in his expensive suit, while my brother Cameron lounged casually like he owned the place. Mom fidgeted with her pearl necklace, avoiding eye contact with everyone. I smoothed my black dress and tried to ignore the familiar knot in my stomach that always appeared during family gatherings. Grandpa Edmund had been my sanctuary growing up. While Dad constantly criticized my career choices and Cameron basked in golden child glory, Grandpa saw me. Really saw me. He'd slip me $20 bills with whispered promises that smart girls like you always land on their feet. When he passed last month, I mourned not just his death, but the loss of the only person who truly believed in me. The attorney, Mr. Pemberton, cleared his throat and began reading. To my beloved grandson Cameron Mitchell, I leave my entire estate, including the family home, investment portfolio, and business holdings, valued at approximately $2.4 million. My world tilted. Cameron smirked while Dad beamed with pride. I sat frozen, processing the impossible. Grandpa had always told me I was special, that I reminded him of Grandma Eleanor. How could he leave me nothing? Are you certain there's nothing else? I managed to whisper. Mr. Pemberton shuffled papers uncomfortably. I'm afraid not, Miss Mitchell. Your grandfather was very specific about his wishes. Dad's voice cut through my shock. Edmund knew Cameron would handle the family legacy responsibly. Some people need to learn that family money isn't handed out to dreamers who waste their lives teaching kindergarten. The cruelty in his tone hit me like a physical blow. 28 years of subtle put-downs and comparisons suddenly crystallized into this moment. I was the family disappointment who'd chosen passion over profit, creativity over conformity. While Cameron climbed corporate ladders with Dad's connections, I'd followed my heart into education, earning a modest teacher's salary that Dad never let me forget was beneath our family's standards. Cameron finally spoke, his voice dripping with false sympathy. Look, Sloan, I'm sure Grandpa assumed you'd be fine. You're so independent and strong. Besides, what would you do with that kind of money anyway? Probably waste it on some artsy nonprofit nonsense. Mom reached over and squeezed my hand, her touch gentle but her eyes distant. Maybe we should discuss this at home, she murmured. The ride home was torture. Cameron chattered excitedly about investment strategies while Dad pontificated about family responsibility and continuing Edmund's vision. I stared out the window, numbness replacing shock. This wasn't just about money, it was about belonging, about worth, about every family dinner where I'd felt like an outsider in my own home. At the family house, Cameron immediately started making calls about property assessments. Dad poured celebratory scotch while discussing tax implications. I excused myself to the bathroom and ugly cried for 10 minutes, mascara streaming down my cheeks. When I emerged, Mom was waiting in the hallway. Her usually perfect composure had cracked, and she looked older somehow, frilier. Without a word, she pressed a thick manila envelope into my hands. Not here, she whispered, glancing toward the living room where Dad and Cameron's voices carried on about their windfall. Take this home. Read it alone. And Sloan? Her grip tightened on my wrist. Your grandfather loved you more than you'll ever know. The envelope felt heavy, significant. Mom's eyes held a desperation I'd never seen before, like she was trying to communicate something vital without words. Before I could ask questions, she hurried back to join Dad and Cameron, slipping seamlessly back into her role as the supportive wife and mother. I drove home to my tiny apartment in a daze, the envelope burning against my passenger seat. My modest teacher's salary afforded me a cramped one-bedroom in an older building, nothing like the sprawling suburban home where I'd grown up feeling perpetually out of place. My rescue cat, Fitzgerald, greeted me with concerned purrs, sensing my distress. For an hour, I stared at that envelope while nursing a glass of cheap wine. Mom's handwriting spelled out my name in her careful script. What could possibly be inside? A consolation prize? Some sentimental photos? A letter explaining why Grandpa had chosen to exclude me so completely? Finally, hands trembling, I tore it open. Inside was a second sealed envelope marked for Sloane's eyes only in Grandpa's familiar scrawl. My heart hammered as I opened it, revealing several documents and a handwritten letter on his personal stationery. My dearest Sloane, it began. If you're reading this, then the vultures have already circled, and you've discovered the contents of my official will. I pray your mother had the courage to give you this envelope, because what you're about to learn will change everything. My hand shook as I continued reading. Grandpa's words painted a picture I could never have imagined. The man I'd thought I knew, the family I'd grown up in, the very foundation of my identity, all of it was about to crumble. The will read today was a fake, sweetheart. A test. I needed to see their true colors one final time before executing my real plans. What they don't know is that I've been documenting their greed, their manipulation, their complete disregard for what our family truly represents. Cameron and your father think they've won, but they have no idea what's coming. I set the letter down, heart racing. A fake will? A test? What was Grandpa talking about? The other documents in the envelope included bank statements, legal paperwork I couldn't fully understand, and what appeared to be surveillance reports. My grandfather, the sweet old man who'd taught me to play chess and make his famous chocolate chip cookies, had been conducting some kind of elaborate investigation into his own family. The final paragraph of his letter made my blood run cold. They've been stealing from me for years, Sloane. Both of them. And tomorrow, the real will goes into effect. Everything, and I mean everything, was always meant to be yours. But first, we're going to make them pay for what they've done. Check the safety deposit box. The key is taped under your desk drawer at school. Trust no one except your mother. She knows more than she's let on. It's time for justice, my brilliant granddaughter. Make them burn. I didn't sleep that night. Grandpa's revelation replayed in my mind like a broken record while Fitzgerald curled against my restless legs. By dawn, shock had crystallized into something far more dangerous, cold, calculating fury. My family hadn't just excluded me from an inheritance, they'd been thieves, stealing from the man who'd loved us all unconditionally. The safety deposit box key was exactly where Grandpa said it would be, taped under my classroom desk drawer like a secret from a spy novel. During my lunch break, I drove to First National Bank with trembling hands and presented the key to a confused teller who checked and double-checked my identification. Inside the box lay treasures that made my grandfather's chess lessons suddenly take on new meaning. He'd been teaching me strategy all along. Bank records showed systematic withdrawals over the past 5 years, money Dad had siphoned using his power of attorney during Grandpa's memory issues. Cameron's signature appeared on forged documents authorizing the sale of family antiques and bonds. They'd been systematically looting Grandpa's estate while he was alive, thinking his declining health made him an easy mark. But the real bombshell was a private investigator's report dated just 3 months before Grandpa's death. Photos showed Dad meeting with shady investment brokers, funneling Grandpa's money into failing ventures that would line his own pockets through kickbacks. Cameron appeared in restaurant surveillance shots, bragging to colleagues about his inheritance advance and how easy it was to manipulate the old man. The most damning evidence was a recording device. Apparently Grandpa had been documenting family conversations for months, Their voices filled my car as I sat in the bank parking lot, listening to conversations that revealed the depth of their betrayal. "The old fool won't last much longer," Dad's voice crackled through the device. "We need to accelerate the timeline before Sloane gets suspicious and starts asking questions." Cameron's laugh was pure venom. "Please. Little Miss Goody Two-Shoes is too busy finger painting with her kindergartners to notice we're securing our future. Besides, even if she figures it out, who's going to believe her? We've been setting this up for years." "Your mother's getting nervous," Dad continued. "She keeps talking about telling Sloane the truth about the money." "Handle Mom," Cameron replied coldly. "She's too weak to cause real problems. And if Sloane becomes an issue, we'll just paint her as the unstable daughter who's jealous of family success. Mental health runs in families, right?" I turned off the recording, nausea churning in my stomach. They hadn't just stolen money, they'd been planning to gaslight me if I discovered their crimes. Worse, they'd been manipulating Mom, using her gentle nature against her. The woman who'd slipped me that envelope wasn't just grieving, she was trapped. The betrayal will made everything clear. Grandpa had indeed left his entire estate to me, but he'd also established an elaborate legal trap for Dad and Cameron. Every fraudulent transaction was documented, every forged signature catalogued. When the betrayal went into effect, which according to the documents would be exactly 7 days after the fake reading, criminal charges would automatically be filed. My grandfather had orchestrated their downfall from beyond the grave. But I wasn't satisfied with passive justice. They'd tormented me my entire life, making me feel worthless and unwanted. Cameron's golden boy status came from stolen money, and Dad's disappointment in my career was hypocritical given his criminal activities. I wanted them to experience the humiliation they'd inflicted on me. That evening, I called Mom from my classroom after school hours. "We need to talk. Privately." She met me at a coffee shop across town, looking haunted and exhausted. When I showed her Grandpa's letter, tears streamed down her carefully composed face. "I've known for months," she whispered. "Your grandfather came to me last year, showed me evidence of what they were doing. He made me promise to give you that envelope, no matter what happened during the will reading. But Sloane, I've been so scared. Your father, he's not the man I married." The money changed him, and Cameron learned from his example. "Mom, you have to help me," I said, reaching across the table to grip her hands. "Grandpa planned this whole thing, but I want to make sure they really understand what they've lost. Will you help me make them pay?" She was quiet for a long moment, staring into her untouched latte. Finally, she looked up with a resolve I'd never seen before. "What did you have in mind?" Over the next 2 hours, we crafted a plan that would have made Grandpa proud. Mom would continue acting normally at home while secretly gathering additional evidence. Meanwhile, I would use my week before the real will activated to orchestrate their complete social and professional destruction. If they wanted to play family games, I'd show them how the game really ended. The next morning, I woke up transformed. Gone was the uncertain, apologetic daughter who'd spent 28 years seeking approval from people who'd never deserved my love. In her place was someone harder, sharper, someone who'd inherited more than money from Grandpa Edmund. I'd inherited his strategic mind and his sense of justice. At school, I taught my kindergartners with renewed energy, their innocent faces reminding me why I'd chosen this profession despite family pressure. These children deserved teachers who'd fought for their dreams, not teachers who'd compromised their values for acceptance. My career wasn't a failure, it was a choice that demonstrated integrity, something my father and brother clearly lacked. During lunch, I made my first move. Using the investigator's report, I crafted carefully worded emails to Dad's business associates, Cameron's employers, and their country club connections. I didn't make accusations. Instead, I posed as a concerned family member asking innocent questions about irregular transactions and wondering if anyone else had noticed concerning patterns in their behavior. The beauty of truth is that it plants seeds of doubt that grow on their own. By afternoon, my phone was buzzing with texts from Dad and Cameron, panic creeping into their messages as business contacts began asking uncomfortable questions. "Sloan, have you been talking to people about family finances?" Cameron's text read. "That's really inappropriate and could damage our professional relationships." I responded with sweet innocence, "Just mentioned to a few people how shocked I was by Grandpa's will." "Why? Is everything okay?" That evening, Mom texted me, "Your father spent 3 hours on the phone doing damage control." Cameron's boss called asking about his character references. "They're starting to realize something's wrong, but they don't know what yet." Perfect. Let them sweat. Let them experience the uncertainty and fear they'd inflicted on others. Because in 5 days, when the real will became public record, their worst nightmares would just be beginning. The dominoes began falling faster than I'd anticipated. By Wednesday, Cameron had been called into human resources at his investment firm for routine questions about his background check discrepancies. Dad's biggest client had postponed a major deal pending clarification of recent concerns. Their perfect facades were developing cracks, and I was just getting started. Mom proved to be an invaluable ally. Years of silent observation had made her an expert in their patterns and weaknesses. She discovered Dad's hidden safe behind a fake electrical panel in his home office, documenting its contents with photos that revealed forged documents, cash bundles, and offshore account information that even Grandpa's investigator hadn't uncovered. 23 years of marriage, Mom told me during one of our clandestine coffee meetings, her voice hollow. "I thought he was just ambitious, maybe a little ruthless in business. I never imagined he was stealing from your grandfather, from family." But my most surprising ally emerged from an unexpected source. Sarah Pemberton, the attorney's daughter and a paralegal at the firm, contacted me through social media. Apparently, her father had been troubled by the will reading and had confided his concerns to her. "That wasn't your grandfather's handwriting on the signature," Sarah told me when we met at a downtown bistro. "Dad has handled Edmund's legal affairs for 15 years. He knows your grandfather's signature like his own, and what he saw on Monday was definitely forged. But when he tried to question it, your father became hostile and threatened to take his business elsewhere." Sarah had done her own investigating and discovered that Dad had presented an entirely different will to her father just 2 weeks before Grandpa's death. The timing was suspicious. "Your grandfather was coherent during our last meeting. He specifically mentioned wanting to ensure you were taken care of because you weren't the only one with real integrity in the family." I shared Grandpa's letter with Sarah, watching her face pale as she read the details. As a legal professional, she immediately understood the implications. "This is ironclad," she whispered. "Your grandfather didn't just plan revenge, he created a legal masterpiece." "But Sloan, once this becomes public, your father and brother will face serious criminal charges. Are you prepared for that?" The question hung in the air like smoke. Was I prepared to destroy my family completely? 28 years of conditioning told me to back down, to be the good daughter who kept peace at any cost. But the recordings of their cruel laughter, the evidence of their systematic theft, the years of making me feel worthless, all of it crystallized into unshakable resolve. "They made their choices," I said firmly. "I'm just making sure they face the consequences." Sarah nodded with professional admiration. "Your grandfather would be proud. He left detailed instructions with our firm about how to handle the real will's revelation. Everything's already in motion, we just needed to wait for the 7-day period to expire." That evening, I executed the next phase of my plan. Using social media and my teacher network, I began sharing carefully crafted posts about family lesson plans that coincidentally highlighted themes of honesty, integrity, and how actions have consequences. My teacher friends, unaware of the deeper meaning, shared my posts widely, creating a digital paper trail that would later serve as evidence of my character when compared to my family's criminal behavior. Meanwhile, Mom was gathering intelligence from her book club, garden society, and volunteer organizations. The women in her circles had always been sources of gossip and social power, but now Mom was strategically mining information about Dad and Cameron's reputations in their professional communities. Margaret Howell mentioned that the Thompson account has been asking questions about your father's business practices, Mom reported during our Thursday evening call. And Cameron's ex-girlfriend Ashley has been telling people about the expensive gifts he bought her last year, gifts that apparently cost more than his official salary could support. The web was tightening beautifully. But the real breakthrough came when Sarah called me Friday evening with news that changed everything. "Sloan, you need to hear this. Dad was reviewing old files tonight and found something incredible. Your grandfather didn't just plan the will revelation, he orchestrated a complete financial forensic audit. The FBI's Economic Crimes Unit has been quietly investigating your father's business dealings for 6 months. Grandpa Edmund was their primary source." My legs went weak. The FBI? Your grandfather suspected the theft went beyond just family money. He believed your father was using similar tactics with his other elderly clients, people who trusted him with power of attorney agreements. The investigation has been building a RICO case. When the will becomes public Monday, it's not just family drama anymore. It's federal crime evidence. I had to sit down. Grandpa hadn't just planned family justice, he'd exposed a pattern of elder financial abuse that could destroy dozens of families. My father wasn't just a family disappointment. He was a predator who targeted vulnerable seniors. This revelation reframed everything. I wasn't just getting revenge for personal slights, I was stopping someone who'd made a career of stealing from people like Grandpa. The recordings, the forged documents, the systematic theft, all of it was part of a larger criminal enterprise that extended far beyond our family. Sarah continued, "The FBI wants to meet with you Sunday evening, before the will becomes public. They need to coordinate your grandfather's evidence with their ongoing investigation. Sloan, this is going to be national news. Are you ready for that level of attention? National news. Federal charges. FBI investigations." What had started as family drama was about to become a public spectacle that would destroy Dad and Cameron's lives completely. Every social connection, every professional relationship, every aspect of their carefully constructed images would crumble under public scrutiny. That night, I called Mom with the FBI revelation. Her silence stretched so long I thought the call had dropped. "Mom? Are you there?" "I'm here," she finally whispered. I knew your father had changed, but I never imagined, other families, oh God, what have I been living with?" "Mom, you're a victim too. You didn't know the extent of his crimes." "But I suspected something," she said, her voice breaking. "I chose to look the other way because it was easier than facing the truth. Those poor families. How many people has he hurt?" The guilt in her voice was heartbreaking, but it also revealed the depths of Dad's manipulation. He'd convinced his own wife that questioning him was disloyal, that family unity meant silent compliance. Mom had been as much a prisoner as a participant in his schemes. Sunday arrived with unseasonable warmth, as if the universe was celebrating the approaching revelation. I met with FBI agents Rodriguez and Chung at Sarah's law firm, their professional demeanor both reassuring and terrifying. They showed me evidence I hadn't seen, dozens of elderly victims, millions in stolen assets, a criminal network that used family connections to appear trustworthy. "Your grandfather's evidence is what broke this case open," Agent Rodriguez explained. "He risked his own family relationships to protect other vulnerable seniors. What you're doing by following through with his plan, that takes remarkable courage." Agent Chung added, "Tomorrow's will reading will trigger arrests within hours. Your father and brother will be taken into custody on federal charges. The media attention will be intense. We can provide protection if needed." As I drove home Sunday evening, I reflected on the journey from Tuesday's devastating will reading to Sunday's FBI briefing. In 5 days, I'd gone from feeling like a family failure to becoming an agent of justice. Grandpa had seen something in me that I'd never recognized, the strength to stand up to bullies, even when those bullies were family. Tomorrow, the real will would be read. Tomorrow, justice would finally be served. And tomorrow, I would discover exactly how strong I really was. But first, I had one final move to make. One last chess piece to position before the game ended. Because Grandpa had taught me that the most beautiful victories come when your opponents never see the final check until it's too late. I'm getting chills just remembering that last night before everything exploded. Have you ever been in a situation where you knew your whole world was about to change? Drop a comment and let me know, because what happened next will blow your mind. Monday morning arrived like a storm breaking. I woke before dawn, my mind crystal clear despite the magnitude of what was about to unfold. Today, my family would discover that their victim had become their destroyer. The second will reading was scheduled for 10 a.m. at Pemberton and Associates. This time, additional parties would be present, FBI agents, a court stenographer, and several individuals whose presence would soon become clear to Dad and Cameron. I arrived early, watching from across the street as my family pulled up in Dad's Mercedes, their confidence still intact. Cameron wore his lucky suit, the same one he'd worn to close his biggest deal last year. Dad strutted with his usual arrogance, probably planning his next vacation with stolen money. Mom followed behind them, and I could see from her posture that she was barely holding herself together. She caught my eye through the window and gave an almost imperceptible nod. Inside the conference room, Mr. Pemberton looked like a man who'd been waiting years for this moment. Sarah stood beside him, professional but with a glimmer of anticipation in her eyes. The FBI agents introduced themselves as observers in a way that made Dad's face pale slightly, though he quickly recovered his composure. I'm not sure why we need a second reading, Dad blustered. The will was quite clear last week. Mr. Pemberton adjusted his glasses. Mr. Mitchell, it has come to our attention that the document read previously was not your father's final will and testament. We have discovered discrepancies that require immediate correction. Cameron shifted uncomfortably. What kind of discrepancies? The kind that constitute federal crimes, Agent Rodriguez said quietly, her badge now clearly visible. I watched the color drain from their faces as Mr. Pemberton opened a different folder, one containing the real will. Edmund Mitchell's actual final will and testament, witnessed and notarized according to legal requirements, reads as follows: To my beloved granddaughter Sloan Mitchell, I leave my entire estate, all properties, investments, and personal belongings, valued at approximately $2.4 million. The silence was deafening. Cameron's mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air. Dad's hands clenched into fists, his face cycling through confusion, rage, and dawning terror. That's impossible, Dad finally managed. I saw him sign the will that left everything to Cameron. Agent Chong spoke for the first time. Yes, Mr. Mitchell, you witnessed him sign a document. Unfortunately, that document was part of an elaborate sting operation designed to document your ongoing theft from Mr. Edmund Mitchell's estate. I could barely contain my satisfaction as the full scope of Grandpa's plan became clear to them. He hadn't just caught them stealing, he'd created an elaborate trap that required them to incriminate themselves further by accepting the fake inheritance. Mr. Pemberton continued reading. Furthermore, Edmund Mitchell's will includes the following statement. Should anyone contest this will or claim previous documentation supersedes these instructions, they should be made aware that all such documents were created as evidence-gathering tools in cooperation with federal law enforcement to document ongoing financial crimes against my person and estate. Cameron found his voice, high and panicked. This is insane. Grandpa was confused in his final months. He had dementia. Actually, Sarah interjected, producing a thick medical file, your grandfather underwent comprehensive cognitive testing 2 weeks before his death. His neurologist, Dr. Patricia Fleming, certified him as completely mentally competent. In fact, his cognitive function was remarkable for his age. The trap was perfect. Every excuse they might have used, Grandpa's mental state, the validity of signatures, the legitimacy of previous documents, had been anticipated and countered with overwhelming evidence. But Grandpa's masterpiece wasn't finished. Mr. Pemberton opened another folder. Mr. Mitchell also left personal messages for his family members. He handed me a sealed envelope marked "For Sloane," to be read aloud. With trembling hands, I opened it and found my grandfather's final gift, his voice speaking truth to power one last time. "My dearest Sloane," I read aloud, "if you're reading this, then Richard and Cameron have revealed their true nature by accepting inheritance they knew they didn't deserve. What they don't yet understand is that every conversation in my home for the past year has been recorded. Every forged document has been photographed. Every stolen dollar has been traced." Dad lurched forward. "You can't use recordings without consent." Agent Rodriguez smiled coldly. "Actually, in this state, single-party consent is sufficient. Your father consented to recording in his own home." I continued reading. "Richard, you stole from me for 5 years, using your power of attorney to fund your failing business ventures. You taught Cameron that family loyalty meant taking what you wanted and manipulating others to stay silent. Cameron, you forged my signature on documents selling family heirlooms to pay for your gambling debts and expensive lifestyle." Cameron's face went white. His gambling problem wasn't family knowledge, he'd hidden it perfectly. Or so he'd thought. "But your greatest crime wasn't against me, it was against Sloane. You made her believe she was unworthy of love and respect because she chose integrity over greed. You punished her for being everything you pretended to be. Today, she inherits not just money, but validation that goodness ultimately triumphs over selfishness." My voice broke slightly as I read those words. Even in death, Grandpa was still defending me, still believing in my worth when I'd struggled to believe in it myself. The letter continued with devastating precision, detailing specific crimes and providing roadmaps for prosecution. But the final paragraph was pure poetry. "To those who might call this revenge, you're wrong. This is justice. Sloane earned this inheritance through 28 years of kindness, integrity, and genuine love. Richard and Cameron earned their consequences through years of cruelty, theft, and manipulation. Sometimes the universe needs help balancing its scales. Consider this my final chess lesson: the most powerful pieces are often the ones your opponents underestimate." As I finished reading, Agent Chong stepped forward with handcuffs. "Richard Mitchell and Cameron Mitchell, you're under arrest for conspiracy to commit wire fraud, elder financial abuse, and money laundering. You have the right to remain silent." Dad's legs buckled. Cameron started crying, actual tears streaming down his face as the reality crashed over him. Their perfect lives, built on stolen foundations, were crumbling in real time. Mom stood up slowly, her voice steady for the first time in years. "Officers, I have additional evidence at home. Bank statements, hidden documents, recordings of my own that corroborate Mr. Mitchell's findings. I'd like to cooperate fully with your investigation." The look of betrayal on Dad's face was almost satisfying enough to end my revenge right there. Almost. But as they led him away in handcuffs, I realized something profound. This wasn't really about revenge anymore. It was about truth, justice, and the kind of legacy Grandpa had really wanted to leave behind. The aftermath hit like a tsunami. Within hours of Dad and Cameron's arrests, local news stations were broadcasting their perp walk footage. By evening, the story had gone viral on social media, with headlines like "Grandfather's posthumous revenge exposes family crime ring" and "Teacher inherits millions after exposing father's elder abuse scheme." I spent that first afternoon at the FBI field office, providing detailed statements and turning over all of Grandpa's evidence. Agent Rodriguez walked me through what would happen next: grand jury proceedings, media attention, and a trial that could last months. The scope of Dad's crimes extended far beyond our family, affecting dozens of elderly victims across 3 states. "Your grandfather saved a lot of people," Agent Chong told me as we finished the paperwork. The evidence he gathered will help us recover millions in stolen assets for other families. You should be proud of what he accomplished. But pride was complicated by grief. Sitting in my car outside the federal building, I finally allowed myself to cry, not tears of victory, but tears of loss. I'd gained justice and an inheritance, but I'd lost a family. The people who'd raised me, however flawed, were now facing decades in federal prison. My phone buzzed constantly with calls from reporters, distant relatives, and curiosity seekers. I turned it off and drove to the one place that felt safe, my elementary school. Walking through those familiar hallways, surrounded by children's artwork and alphabet charts, reminded me who I really was beneath all the family drama. Principal Martinez found me sitting in my empty classroom, staring at the motivational posters I'd hung to inspire my students. "Sloan? I heard the news. How are you holding up?" How was I holding up? I was a millionaire who'd just destroyed her family. I was vindicated but orphaned. I was free but completely alone except for Mom, who was processing her own trauma from discovering her husband's true nature. "I keep thinking I should feel different," I admitted. "Triumphant or satisfied or something. Instead, I just feel empty." Principal Martinez, a wise woman who'd navigated her own family crises, sat down beside me. "Justice doesn't always feel like victory, especially when it involves people we love. You did the right thing, but that doesn't make it easy." That evening, Mom and I met at her house, soon to be seized as proceeds from criminal activity. She moved through rooms like a ghost, packing personal items while federal agents cataloged everything else. 23 years of marriage reduced to evidence bags and property seizure notices. "I keep thinking about signs I missed," she said, folding wedding photos into a box she'd probably never open again. "How long was he stealing? How many people did we hurt by my willful blindness?" We found evidence of Dad's crimes hidden throughout the house. False walls concealing cash bundles, safety deposit box keys taped under drawers, forged documents stuffed between mattresses. Our family home had been the headquarters of a criminal enterprise, and neither Mom nor I had truly understood the extent of the deception. The media attention was overwhelming. My school had to hire security guards to keep reporters from harassing students and staff. My neighbor's Ring doorbell captured journalists camping outside my apartment building. Social media exploded with family crime documentaries, inheritance revenge stories, and amateur legal analysts debating the case's implications. But the public response wasn't uniformly supportive. Online comments ranged from "she's a hero for exposing elder abuse" to "what kind of daughter destroys her own family?" The complexity of family loyalty versus moral obligation played out in thousands of heated discussions across every platform. 3 days after the arrests, Cameron's lawyer called. He wanted to meet, claiming Cameron had information that could benefit everyone. Against my better judgment and FBI advice, I agreed to see him at the law office with Sarah present. Cameron looked terrible. Orange jumpsuit, unshaven, eyes red from crying or lack of sleep. The golden boy who'd started through life with unearned confidence was gone, replaced by a broken man facing the consequences of his choices. "Sloan, please," he started, "you have to know I never meant for it to go this far. Dad convinced me that Grandpa wanted us to manage his money, that we were protecting the family legacy." I studied his face, looking for genuine remorse but seeing only self-pity and desperation. "Cameron, you called me unstable behind my back. You planned to gaslight me if I discovered the theft. Where exactly was the family protection in that?" His lawyer, an expensive suit who clearly didn't believe his client's sob story, shifted uncomfortably. Cameron pressed on. "I can give you information about Dad's other business partners. There are people who helped him, investors who knew the money was stolen. If I cooperate, maybe we can work out some kind of deal." "What kind of deal?" I asked, though I already knew where this was heading. "Maybe you could speak at my sentencing hearing. Tell the judge about my character, about how Dad manipulated me. I was just following his lead, I didn't understand the full scope of what we were doing. The audacity was breathtaking. Even facing federal charges, Cameron was trying to manipulate me into saving him. He wanted me to provide character testimony for someone who'd spent years actively working to undermine my character. I stood up slowly, Sarah following my lead. Cameron, you're 26 years old. You've had plenty of time to develop your own moral compass. The fact that you chose not to isn't my responsibility to fix. As we left, I could hear him calling after me, promises and threats mixing together in a desperate stream of consciousness. His lawyer would probably advise him to take whatever plea deal the prosecution offered. Federal white-collar crime sentences weren't known for their leniency. That night, FBI agent Rodriguez called with an update that put everything in perspective. We've identified 43 victims of your father's schemes, Sloan. The total stolen amount exceeds $8 million. Some of these people lost their entire retirement savings. Your grandfather's evidence is helping us recover money that will literally save lives. $8 million. 43 victims. Families destroyed, retirements eliminated, trust shattered across multiple communities. My father hadn't just been a family disappointment, he'd been a predator who targeted society's most vulnerable members. Suddenly, my moral calculations shifted completely. This wasn't about family loyalty versus personal justice anymore. This was about protecting innocent people from ongoing harm. Every day Dad and Cameron remained free was another day they could have destroyed more lives. The next morning brought unexpected news that would reshape my understanding of everything that had happened. Mom called, her voice strange and distant. Sloan, you need to come over. I found something in your father's office that changes everything. I think there might be more victims than we realized. What Mom had discovered in Dad's hidden safe was a client list that made my blood run cold. Hundreds of names, addresses, and detailed financial profiles of elderly individuals across 5 states. Net worth assessments, family relationship charts, and vulnerability ratings that read like a predator's hunting guide. This wasn't opportunistic theft, it was systematic targeting of senior citizens on an industrial scale. Among the documents was a partnership agreement with 2 other financial advisors, creating a network that shared victim information and money laundering resources. Dad hadn't just been stealing from Grandpa and his own clients, he'd been part of an organized criminal enterprise that treated elder abuse like a business model. The FBI response was swift and massive. Within a week, they'd arrested 6 additional suspects and seized assets in 12 states. The case became a federal task force priority, with Dad and Cameron now facing RICO charges that carried potential life sentences. What had started as family revenge had exposed one of the largest elder financial abuse rings in federal history. Media attention exploded beyond anything I'd anticipated. 60 Minutes wanted an interview. Netflix offered to buy documentary rights. Publishers called about book deals. Suddenly, everyone wanted to know about the kindergarten teacher who'd brought down a criminal empire by refusing to accept family betrayal. But the real victory wasn't the headlines or the inheritance money. It was the letter I received from Mrs. Dorothy Hensley, an 84-year-old woman in Ohio whose life savings had been stolen by Dad's network 3 years earlier. Dear Miss Mitchell, she wrote in shaky handwriting, because of your courage, the FBI recovered most of my retirement money. I can keep my house now and won't have to move in with my daughter who's already struggling. You saved my independence, and I'll never forget that. Your grandfather raised a hero. Letters like that arrived daily. Adult children thanking me for saving their parents' dignity. Seniors expressing gratitude for recovered nest eggs that meant the difference between security and poverty. Social workers sharing stories of families reunited after financial stress had torn them apart. The inheritance itself was overwhelming. $2.4 million required financial advisors, tax lawyers, and investment strategies I'd never imagined needing. But Grandpa had planned for that too. His will included recommendations for honest financial planners and detailed instructions about charitable giving that would honor his memory while supporting causes we'd both cared about. I established the Edmund Mitchell Foundation for Elder Financial Protection, funding legal aid for seniors fighting financial abuse and educational programs teaching families to recognize exploitation warning signs. Half my inheritance went directly into the foundation, creating a permanent legacy that would protect future generations. My teaching career took an unexpected turn when the state education department offered me a position developing curricula about financial literacy and family ethics. My kindergarten students had taught me that moral foundations start early. Now I could help other teachers plant those seeds in thousands of children. The trial lasted 4 months and became a media sensation. Dad maintained his innocence throughout, claiming he'd been protecting family assets and that his victims had consented to investment strategies. Cameron eventually accepted a plea deal in exchange for testimony against the other network members. He received 12 years in federal prison. Dad's sentencing was particularly satisfying. The judge, an elderly woman who'd clearly been moved by victim impact statements, delivered a scathing condemnation of his crimes before handing down a 25-year sentence. At 62, it was essentially a life sentence. "Mr. Mitchell," the judge said, "you betrayed the fundamental trust that holds society together. You targeted the generation that built this country, stealing not just their money but their peace of mind in their golden years. Your crimes weren't just financial, they were moral abominations that destroyed families and crushed spirits." I watched from the gallery as he was led away in shackles, feeling neither joy nor sadness but a profound sense of closure. Justice had been served, but more importantly, his ability to hurt innocent people had ended permanently. Mom began rebuilding her life with remarkable resilience. She moved into a modest apartment near my school and started volunteering with senior advocacy groups. Her testimony had been crucial in convicting Dad's associates, and she'd received immunity in exchange for cooperation. The experience transformed her from a passive observer into a fierce advocate for elder rights. "I spent 23 years enabling his crimes through willful blindness," she told me over dinner one evening. "I can't undo that damage, but I can spend the rest of my life making sure other families don't go through what we did." We'd grown closer than ever, bonded by shared trauma and mutual respect. She'd found her voice after decades of silence, while I'd discovered strength I'd never known I possessed. Our relationship became the foundation for a new kind of family, one based on choice rather than blood, support rather than manipulation. A year later, I stood in Grandpa's old house, now legally mine but emotionally complicated. The FBI had released it after evidence collection, and I'd spent months deciding whether to sell it or reclaim it. Walking through rooms where he'd taught me chess and shared his wisdom, I finally understood his true final gift. He hadn't just given me money or justice, he'd given me the knowledge that goodness doesn't require perfection, and that sometimes love means holding people accountable for their actions. His chess lessons had been preparation for life's most difficult moves, teaching me that protecting what matters most sometimes requires sacrificing what seems important in the moment. I converted his house into a community center for senior services, offering financial counseling, legal aid, and social programs for elderly residents. The Edmund Mitchell Senior Center became a place where vulnerable people could find protection and support, turning a site of family trauma into a beacon of community healing. The kindergartners I taught remained my greatest joy. Their innocent questions about fairness, sharing, and family helped me process my own complicated emotions about justice and forgiveness. When they asked why some grown-ups make bad choices, I could honestly tell them that even when families disappoint us, we can choose to build new families with people who share our values. Standing in my classroom on the anniversary of Grandpa's death, surrounded by children's drawings and achievement certificates, I finally felt complete peace. The scared, uncertain woman who'd left that first will reading had been replaced by someone stronger, wiser, and more compassionate. My phone buzzed with a text from Sarah, now a close friend who'd helped me navigate the legal aftermath. "Dorothy Hensley wants to nominate you for a state humanitarian award." Apparently, you've inspired her to become a senior advocate too. Grandpa's legacy keeps growing. I smiled, thinking about how proud he'd be to see the ripple effects of his carefully planned justice. His chess lessons had taught me that the most elegant victories create positive consequences far beyond the immediate game. Have you ever had to choose between family loyalty and doing what's right? It's one of life's hardest decisions, but sometimes standing up to the people who hurt us is the only way to protect others from the same pain. What would you have done in my situation? Let family crimes continue, or risk everything to expose the truth? If this story resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe for more real-life family drama that'll restore your faith in justice. Share this video with someone who needs to hear that sometimes karma really does come full circle, and drop a comment telling me about your own experiences with family betrayal and recovery. Thank you for joining me on this incredible journey from family disappointment to finding my real purpose. Remember, the family that truly matters isn't always the one you're born into, sometimes it's the one you choose to build with people who value truth, integrity, and genuine love. Life has a way of balancing the scales when we're brave enough to stand up for what's right, and I hope my story reminds you that your voice matters, your integrity has value, and sometimes the scariest choices lead to the most beautiful outcomes.